What if Honda quietly released a bike in 2026 that doesn't try to break records, doesn't try to dominate headlines, but somehow ends up becoming the one machine riders actually use the most? And here's the twist. This isn't about crazy horsepower or advanced electronics. This is about something much simpler, and honestly, much more important. Welcome back to Acer Rider, and today we're diving deep into a concept that feels incredibly real, the 2026 Honda Sahara 300. Now let's get something straight right from the beginning. This is not a bike designed to impress on paper. It's not trying to compete with big adventure bikes or high-performance dual sports. And that's exactly why it makes so much sense. Because if you really think about it, most riders don't need extreme power. They don't need complicated electronics. What they actually need is a machine that fits into their daily life without effort. And I'll be honest, this is something I personally believe the industry has slowly started to forget. The Sahara 300 concept feels like a return to reality. Let's start with the design, because this is where the identity of the bike really begins. The Sahara name already suggests something rugged, something capable of handling long distances in unpredictable terrain. But instead of going for a bulky, oversized adventure bike look, this machine would work best with a clean, lightweight, and purposeful design. Picture a slim fuel tank that doesn't get in your way, a comfortable, upright riding position, and a seat that's actually built for hours of riding. Not just short bursts, a small windscreen to cut through wind on highways, high ground clearance for rough roads, and just enough bodywork to protect without adding unnecessary weight. And personally, this is exactly the kind of design I prefer. Because when a bike looks simple and approachable, you don't hesitate to ride it. You don't overthink it. You just get on and go. That's where real riding starts. Now let's talk about the engine, because this is where the Sahara 300 either becomes something special or just another average bike. A 300 cubic centimeters class single-cylinder engine would be ideal here. Something fuel-injected, reliable, and tuned for torque rather than top-end speed. You don't need aggressive power delivery. You need smooth, predictable performance that works in real conditions. And here's my personal take on this. I've come to realize that the best engines aren't the ones that impress you for 5 minutes. They're the ones that keep you comfortable for 5 hours. That's exactly what a 300 cubic centimeters engine can do. It's strong enough to cruise on highways without feeling strained. It's light enough to stay manageable in traffic, and it's forgiving enough for beginners while still being enjoyable for experienced riders. That balance, it's rare. Now let's move into performance, because this is where the Sahara 300 could quietly outperform a lot of bigger bikes. This wouldn't be a heavy machine. It would likely stay in a lightweight category, making it easy to handle in tight spaces, city traffic, and off-road conditions. And that's something I personally value more than raw power. Because when a bike is light, everything becomes easier. Turning feels natural. Controlling it in difficult terrain feels less stressful. Even simple things like parking or maneuvering become effortless. And that changes how often you ride. Because you're not thinking about effort, you're just thinking about going out. Now imagine combining that lightweight feel with a well-tuned suspension setup. Long travel front forks, a rear monoshock, and enough ground clearance to handle broken roads, dirt paths, and unexpected obstacles. Not extreme off-road suspension, but something properly balanced between comfort and capability. And this is where I think the Sahara 300 could really stand out. Because it wouldn't try to be the best off-road bike or the best road bike. It would aim to be good everywhere. And honestly, that's exactly what most riders need. Now let's talk braking and safety. Modern dual-channel ABS, front and rear disc brakes, and predictable stopping power. Nothing overly aggressive, nothing too soft, just consistent and reliable. Because again, this bike isn't about pushing limits. It's about confidence. And I think that's something people underestimate. A bike that gives you confidence is a bike you'll take further, more often, and into situations you might normally avoid. Now, features. This is where I really hope Honda shows restraint. Fuel injection? Absolutely. LED lighting? Makes sense. Simple digital display? Perfect. But beyond that, keep it clean. No unnecessary ride modes, no complicated traction control systems, no overwhelming electronics. Because the moment you add too much complexity, you take away what makes this bike special. And I'll say this clearly, simplicity is not a limitation. It's an advantage. Now let's talk about the real-world use case, because this is where the SAHARA 300 truly shines. This is a bike you can ride every single day. Commute to work? Easy. Run errands? No problem. Weekend ride? Perfect. Unexpected dirt road? Just go. And this is where my personal input really comes in. If I had to choose one bike to live with, just one for everything, I would seriously consider something like this. Not because it's the most exciting, but because it's the most usable. You don't need to plan your rides around it. You don't need to prepare yourself mentally before taking it out. You just ride. And honestly, that's what riding should feel like. Now here's something interesting to think about. A lot of riders start with smaller bikes, then move to bigger, more powerful machines. But after some time, many of them start looking back at simpler bikes again. Why? Because they realize something important. Enjoyment doesn't come from complexity. It comes from connection. And that's exactly what the SAHARA 300 represents. It's not trying to impress you. It's trying to stay with you. Now let's talk about expected pricing, because this is where things could get really interesting. If Honda positions this correctly, the SAHARA 300 could be one of the most affordable and practical dual sport options in its category. Somewhere in that accessible price range where new riders can enter, and experienced riders don't feel like they're overpaying for unnecessary features. And that's important, because a bike like this should be easy to own, easy to maintain, and easy to keep for years. Now here's the twist I mentioned at the beginning. What if the 2026 Honda SAHARA 300 doesn't try to compete with the biggest or most powerful bikes, but ends up becoming the one that people actually ride the most? Because think about it. It's not the fastest. It's not the most advanced. It's not the most expensive. But it might be the most practical. And in real life, that's what matters. So the real question is, would you choose something like this? A bike that fits into your life, adapts to your needs, and never feels like too much? Or would you still go for something bigger, more powerful, but less usable? Because I'll be honest, the more I think about it, the more I realize this is exactly the kind of bike I'd want to ride every day. If this got you thinking, hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Acer Rider for more content like this. And before we wrap this up, quick disclaimer. The 2026 Honda SAHARA 300 discussed here is not an officially confirmed model by Honda. This concept is based on naming heritage, real-world dual sport trends, and AI-assisted creative interpretation for entertainment and discussion purposes. Because sometimes, the best bike isn't the one that does everything perfectly. It's the one that makes you want to ride every single day.